Everybody, welcome to Teamfight Talkshow. We're back. That's right. It's another fine episode of this lovely Teamfight Tactic podcast. I am DoA. With me, as always, is my co-host Frodan, and with us today as well is our very special guest, Aessah, Challenger Series winner, many tournament enjoyer, participator, good TFT player, obviously, and has a lot of unique, I think, perspectives on the game and the scene and all that. So we're happy you're here. How's it going, man?
I'm good. Yo, Doa, you're cutting out for me like a tiny bit
Am I?
in between. Yeah, I heard
Okay.
like 2/3 of what you said in chunks.
Oh, weird. Oh, well,
So,
I'm glad you missed all the really mean things, but hopefully the rest of it came through just fine. But did you hear me ask how you're doing? Any starting thoughts? We usually do closing thoughts at the end of the show. Any starting thoughts today?
starting thoughts is
Yeah.
I just got out of a game where I was going for Ari. This guy took high roll on 4-6 and bought 11 Aris, so I was kind of upset about that, but
Oh
I,
no. It doesn't sound like it's fine, but I'll believe you. Yeah.
it's fine. One more game to
Yep.
regain the LP.
All right. Well, Frodan, how you doing? I watched some of the games you played earlier today, and there was some traumatic stuff going on. There was like
Oh
tens,
man.
dozens of gold rolled without the things you want popping up.
Yeah. So right now, as much as some people are playing to climb, I kind of really want to play at the beginning of the set to learn. So
Mm,
one of the things that I try to do is pretty much try to reroll like everything and just get a good general sense of their power curve, and seeing how viable they are.
yeah.
And man, it's just so unsatisfying sometimes. I feel like I've been whiffing a lot. You see it earlier today, and even when you do, there's still some like things that are pretty frustrating. Like today, I just played a game where I had Syndra reroll, and the amount of time she fizzled her ult, because I figured with Alistar and Hextech nerf, which we'll talk about in a sec,
Mm.
there's less Colossus, therefore Syndra should be a little bit more open, right, to be able to cast a little bit more often. She fizzles just as much as if they're playing Colossus, because it's so annoying because the units
Yeah.
die, so she misses there, or like she casts on someone that's unstoppable, like Jace. If he's in the middle of his swing, she just doesn't actually work anymore, and Jace is a frontline unit, so it's so frustrating, man.
You
So like
know,
I have Centra 3 whiff twice, and it just in a row. It was just, I don't know. I was really upset.
it's a lot like the last time Cinder was in TFT because she would do this thing where she would, instead of throwing people across the arena, she would like pick them up and gently set them down again sometimes too, which is not what I want my Syndra to do. You remember back in like, what was it, set three? I was trying to do like Syndra. No, that was set three was when the good Syndra carry existed, when she just blew people up. It was set four, right?
At 5,
Where
but Central should
five?
pick people up. It was 60
Okay,
mana.
then it was set five. Yeah, it all blends together for me now. But it must have been set five. Yeah, where that happened too. But she's a fun unit, so hopefully that kind of stuff gets worked out because I enjoy it a lot. I enjoy playing her too. But yeah, got a lot to talk about today. There's been some esports. There's been a B patch that just came in, which is very good. We'll be talking about that in a little bit. But before we go any further, let's take a look at our augment choices for today. And as always, Frodan, why don't you go ahead and take us through that?
Yep, that's right. So we have augment choices in allowing the chat or the people that show up during the live broadcast of this episode to vote on what they want us to do in the spirit of augments and Neon Knight set 6 and 6.5. The first one we have is very VIP, where the guest picks someone in chat to get a free sub. It's a very
Wow.
nice, generous thing that Aesah can do because he is our guest.
You don't have
And
to
we
pay
have
for it though. Don't worry.
He doesn't have to pay for it, at least as far as we know. We'll see.
Maybe he does. Maybe that's
Backfoot
the
is our
surprise.
second option. It's a quiz for hosts and guests about a random previous set. We don't know exactly which set it will be, and I don't believe Aesah played every TFT set, so this could be pretty difficult for Aesah. Is that correct?
Yeah, I actually already know which one it is, and it's not one of the sets I played, so I
Oh,
played
all
zero
right.
games in the
Well, wait, no, don't spoil it because
Yeah,
we don't know
we're
yet
we're
either.
a team. We're a
Actually,
team.
yeah, yeah.
Alright.
It's because
Yeah,
it's
we're
for
in this
hosts
together,
and the
yeah.
guest. The third will be Woodland Charm, where the guest draws his favorite TFT champion of all time. You know, Woodland or something like a copy. You have a couple of Woodland augments right now in the game.
Mm,
And we'll see if Aesah has some artistic ability in the drawing department. So you can vote. It's right now going on as a poll in the chat.
yeah.
Aesah, you can potentially influence this a little bit if you'd like to get in
Uh,
some words before the polls close.
It's looking like a blowout. I don't know if my vote's gonna matter.
I mean, we'll say too that like part of this challenge, the Woodland Charm, is for Frodan and I to guess what champion you're drawing, and you can't use like any letters or numbers. You can't write anything on there that would like tell us that. So just be purely
Okay.
your artistic expression that
I'm sure you'll be able
we
to
have to
guess
guess
it.
from.
I mean, I can't
Okay.
draw that good, but there's no way you wouldn't be able to figure out what champion it was. I feel like.
All right. The big words. That's
Okay, I don't
have
feel
you
like
done
that's
much
a.
drawing in the past?
I don't feel like that's a very high bar, but yeah.
Okay. Do you have any art experience in the past?
No, not really.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting, and it is going to be Woodland Charm. Okay, so we'll get into that later. That's going to be really fun. We'll come back to that later in the show. But I did want to ask you a little bit about your history in gaming before we dive into the news too, because you've been at the top of the ladders of a lot of different games. I know in your interview with Gangly, like Overwatch was mentioned, StarCraft was mentioned, Hearthstone was mentioned. You're also a professional poker player as well, if I understood that right. And so, you were just born to game, it seems like. But do you have like a method you use to get to the top of the ladders? Or everything? Do you just kind of play it, and does it just sort of come to you organically, or do you have a system you use to try to analyze the game, break it down, and then succeed in it?
I think for me, it's more. I would say it's more organic. Um, but
Okay.
it's a little bit of both, right? Because I think it's just like the way like my brain works about stuff. Like if I notice a lot of times, like if I'm watching like a friend play and they lose a game, they're like, "Man, like Yone is so overpowered. I don't know how to beat him." And then that's it. They lose another game, they say the same thing. But it's like for me, if I lose a
Mhm.
game against someone running Yone, then I'm gonna play it. I'm either gonna play it the next game or something and try to like figure out like, okay, like what's good about this. Um, so it's just like the mentality of like learning and trying to get a little bit better after every game you play. And I think no matter what game you play, that applies to every game, right?
So would you say you feel a lower level of frustration when you lose than the average player then? Because, you mentioned your friend who's like, oh, I lost to Yone OP, Yone bust, I don't know what to do. That's a lot of gamers have that attitude, but I think within esports, you find a lot of gamers with your attitude too, where it's like, well, this is an opportunity to learn. This is a way I can like get closer to the game I'm already enjoying. So do you feel like you get tilted less often than the average gamer?
I think that's definitely true now because I mean, well, I played poker for like a decade, and like
Hmm.
even if I lose 200 LP, I mean that's a lot better than losing like $2,000. So
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
I would say like
Sounds better.
yeah. So I would say after playing poker, it's like losing in other games doesn't feel nearly as like tilting.
Hmm.
Fair enough. Can you talk a little bit more about your poker background? What how successful or how your career was when you were playing very seriously, and what made you want to put that down and pick up something like TFT?
Um, so I would say video games like came first, and like I played a whole bunch of different games. I just always liked gaming ever since I was like in elementary school or maybe even before, possibly. So that
Hmm.
came first, and then I found out about it's like, hey, there's this game you can actually play and like make money in. And that was like really exciting to me. I was around like 23 when I first started. I worked for the FDA before then, and yeah, it went really well. It went a lot better than I expected, to be honest. Because even I remember my very first time playing, I like studied a lot because like I didn't want to lose money, right? And then
Right.
I went to the casino and I just immediately identified my very first time playing like these other players were like doing things that are like just really bad. So and then yeah, just that was about a decade ago. I've been playing for most of the decade since then. Took a break to work at Riot between then, but yeah. I think there's a second part of your question that I forgot.
Oh, what has encouraged you to pursue like TFT of
Oh
all things?
yeah. I would say like poker. I mean, it's a deck of 52 cards. All the cards are like not that different. Like it's a five of spades versus a seven of diamonds. Really that exciting. So it's just after you play this game for a decade, it's just a little. It gets a little boring, I guess. So I have
Sure.
definitely have a lot more
Mhm.
fun playing TFT. I think in terms of sheer complexity, TFT is like much more complex than poker. Like it's not even a little bit close. So
Makes
yeah, it's
sense.
just a lot more fun.
Poker needs a revamp. When is Poker 2 coming out? I can't believe the devs are so lazy. Like, come on, like Poker
Wait,
2.
We still need a
been
mid set
decades.
for.
That's
People
right
come up
first.
with new poker
Poker
games all the
1.5.
time, and I actually do like playing those, but
Okay.
but a lot of times they don't really catch on. Like people, what's been really trending recently is just adding more cards. Like the poker you guys probably think of as like 2 cards in your hand, 5 community cards, and
Yeah.
then there's PLO with 4 cards, and then they have 5 cards, now it's 6 cards. But it's like, I mean, they do all kinds of stuff, but yeah, none of them really have caught on to be that big.
All right. So the fan mods have not quite caught anyone's attention
Yeah,
yet. Hopefully,
not quite.
hopefully the devs step it up. We'll see. Who are the devs of poker? I don't know. Probably some dudes in the old west. Who knows?
Anyone who wants
that
to be.
knowledge has been lost to the ages. Yeah, I suppose that's true. We can all be poker devs.
Yeah, true.
All right. Well, on that note, let's move on to good things accomplished by actual devs, such as the 12.4 B patch, which just came in a day early. Even they dropped it on us Tuesday. What was that? Like late Tuesday afternoon, early Tuesday evening on the West Coast here. And I think it was something a lot of people were looking forward
Yes.
to. There were a lot of comps that were usable, but there were two that seemed to reign supreme, and the Sivir Hex Tech and the Renata, variations. Like those two things were winning nearly every lobby, it felt like. So I think everyone was pretty hyped about that. Like you said, yes, in a very excited way immediately when the graphic came up, Aesah. So tell us about what's been your initial experience on the B patch? Like, has it delivered on those issues?
I think it's a little sad because out of the new traits, there's like Hextex, Debonairs. Is there another one?
Striker.
Those are the two main ones, but there's like some individual traits that are
Okay,
unique
yeah.
to champions.
But I feel like I guess I feel like Hextech came with like the most new units, like has more units than Debonair, I think. And it is I feel like it's a little sad now because it seems a little too weak. So it's a little sad that it's like the new units that we're like looking forward to playing with are like the new big synergy. But other than that, I mean, I'm glad like Soko is like more of a decision whether you have to play him, and yeah, like bringing down the dominant stuff lets us play like kind of the other new units that haven't been like that viable, I guess.
Yeah, I know the patch hit Frodan kind of hard because Silco's right behind him, so now Dan's getting less mana at the start of every fight. But
Oh, man.
has it been okay? Like, have you been able to carry on anyway?
Yeah, it's been good. I feel like we should give some bigger context for people who haven't really played a lot of TFT in the past week. Maybe they've just been watching streamers or they heard a lot of controversy. A lot of people weren't exactly enjoying the first week of release, and the B patch came early. Much because there was just a lot of imbalance in the meta. It became quite degenerate really quickly where people were playing a lot of Renata bruisers and just spamming a lot of Renata comps. And you would see lobbies where 3 out of the top 4 players were all playing like Renata 1. And then one person hit like a Silco and they would also join them in the top 4. So it got kind of bad at one point. I agree with Aesah's analysis where Hextech Sivir, she basically capitalized on a bunch of attack speed. And because Hextech, the secondary effect is you get magic damage for every time you attack, you don't have to actually do anything except stack attack speed and put a static shiv to reduce their magic resistance so the magic damage would penetrate deeper. Yep. So it kind of created some really degenerate metas where people were just either playing Sivir Hextech or they were playing Renata and the Bruisers. And since this B patch dropped, I'm pretty sure it's just like Riot's attempt to make sure that there aren't no additional complaints. I think they definitely eventually over nerfed Hextech. But just within the first impression of the day, we do see some meta evolving. So I'm optimistic that we'll see 6.5 land in a good spot.
Yeah, I think there's always that initial backlash where it's like, well, Sivir's been nerfed, so like now we'll never play Sivir, and all that kind of stuff. And I think you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier today, where like Sivir probably just needs to be shifted a little bit in terms of how she's used in comps. Like, I think if you just go AD Sivir, ignore the Shiv, and go like focus on 4 striker and building around that, rather than the Hextech side of things, she can still do well. Because it still is a lot of damage, especially with Striker. If you just stack her with a ton of AD, she still does quite a bit. So I think Sivir can still top 4. Just like, it's not just the easy mode, get 6 Hex Tech, and then like go AFK and you get a top 4 as it was in the first couple days of the new set especially. But So I'm curious over the next couple days how people are going to start to go back to stuff like Sivir and bring it back up again, because it's still okay, but you know, right now everyone's very like Sivir averse at the moment because of the nerfs coming in. And I do agree that Hextech was maybe like a little bit over nerfed.
Well, here the thing is that towards like, okay, so this is the timeline. Wednesday, 6.5 drops. People are pretty optimistic. They want to give it a try. People are streaming. They're grinding. Like, okay, whatever. Silco's busted. But, you know, maybe we saw some variations of different comps. Irelia was doing really well in North America. In Korea, Sivir was starting to pop up. In China, Renata was really getting popular there. Then by the weekend, it was full on degen mode. It was basically two comps dominating with like some people being able to penetrate the top through some Kha'Zix builds, some Irelia builds. Maybe you'd be able to play some reroll comps that were doing okay. Then by like Monday, I started seeing Hextech players actually just not really take lobbies. Like they would get top 4, they'd be in a dominant HP position, but it felt like they consistently bled out. There's an argument. There's part of me that actually believes that as long as they fix a little bit of the early game, Hextech should have been totally fine and maybe not even super patch worthy. The only problem is that some of the early game units like Sejuani and Rek'Sai, which kind of anchored everything, was just way too powerful. And we talk a little bit about the Hextech. Did you see what they did to Rek'Sai? They just completely gutted her.
Rek'Sai did not deserve that. I don't think Rek'Sai totally deserved that. Like Rek'Sai was strong, but like, man, poor Rek'Sai. She's relegated to just being like kind of a tank at this point. Aesah, what do you think? Was Rek'Sai hit too hard with that? I didn't think Rek'Sai was as much of a problem as the patch notes made it seem like she was.
I would have to look again, but I thought it was fine because her healing, which is the most important part of her ability, I think like wasn't touched. And I think like I think that's fine. I think she's still gonna be a good 2 cost.
It was, for me, the thing that was shocking was the defensive stat stealing was cut to just like 10% across the board. Which I don't think you really need that because she's usually going to be ulting another like frontliner. I know like really early game, like you're stacking that up, but I feel like normally she's just going to ult another frontliner, and both the Rek'Sai and the other unit that she's ulting are probably just going to die in like a few seconds anyway. So I don't really think it matters that much. I think like the heal is the most important part of her ability. So it's mostly an early game nerf, which I think is fine. Like she's still a strong unit early game. Fair enough. I'm trying to find the exact patch notes to see if there's anything that I'm missing.
Let me.
Oh, you got the link? Okay.
I'll just DM it to you directly. So we a couple things. So Rek'Sai got nerfed, as we mentioned. The armor and magic resistance steel has been significantly reduced. Echo got nerfed, which I think is really good. In general, triple trait champions are really powerful, and Echo's utility was insane. Plus, his tags are pretty much S tier across the board because of the redundancy of Scrap and Innovator alongside Ezreal. So I think that was good just because Echo, I think, was just too good at what he does. Zac got nerfed. Okay, how many times? Okay, how many times have you seen a Zac 2 with 75 damage reduction just tank infinite on carries like Irelia? Like I've seen Irelia 3 get stuck on like a 1-item Zac 2.
I see no problem.
Have you seen some stuff like that?
Oh yeah, that's on my board. That's why I liked it. I didn't want that to go away.
That's kind of how I feel about Echo. Yeah.
Okay,
so I understand this unit is the highest win rate 3 costs last patch and this patch. Oh, like last patch was in the NSS 6 and also this patch, but I just don't want to see him nerfed. I love playing this unit on my board, but yeah.
See, that's the thing. I think we all agree that game balance is good, but at the same time, like I was watching the other regions on day one, and like I watched Korea a lot because like that's a scene I'm very close with, and I saw like at the end of the first day. There was this one player that was like 200 or 300 LP out ahead of everybody else, and he was just 2020 Hextech Sivir, and I was like, oh, this looks like it's really good. So I started doing that, jumped up like to D1 almost immediately, and then the guide came out on Reddit, and I'm like, oh, party's over. And then after that, it was like every lobby was 3 or 4 people trying to play Hextech Sivir. But for that one glorious like 24 to 36 hour period of time, it was great just to play Sivir every game, and nobody contested me. Top 4, top 2 every game without fail. It needed to be patched. I understand that, but it was fun while it lasted. Yeah. Well, moving on. Oh, go ahead.
The one last thing is that there's a couple of buffs. Vex got buffed. Still really
Yeah.
unsure about how impactful that is right now. I think there's still some testing to be done. And then they buffed an augment in the golden gifts. So now they give you an extra gray orb. And golden gifts in general, the econ augments probably feel like they might be a little bit inconsistent with when their offerings, right? Like you don't want to have them at the late stage of the game, but Golden Gifts was definitely something that felt super bad when you compared it to some of the other prismatic augments that you were offered at the time. It just felt like atrocious if you got these gold orbs that gave you like a single toma traits and a bunch of gold. It just felt really bad.
Yeah. I think those are the things too where there was some complaints from people where they weren't as thrilled with some of the newer augments like that, and like that's something that's going to get adjusted over time. And it's nice to have the big refresh and the big new wave of things to think about that kind of change the way you think about the game. But the balance was so good at the end of 6.0 too. I think a lot of people are missing that kind of feeling too. But let's move on, because this is sort of related, sort of not. But I really love this article that Mort wrote about the expectation of being highly ranked in the game that you were working on as a dev, and like the pros and cons of that sort of mindset. And the gist of it is that he got to Challenger because he wanted to, prove to himself in the community that he could do it. But in doing so, he totally, screwed up his work-life balance. He, was not happy, and it skewed his perspective on the game too, because when all your mental ability is focused on trying to win the game, then, you're not thinking about it as objectively, as broadly as I think, devs should. So the general takeaway seemed to be, it's better that devs just focus on making the game fun for people, trying to make the game as balanced as they can be. Focusing on being the best player in the game is a lot of mental energy sent towards something that's really not going to make the game that much better. And I agree with everything that he said in that. And I think a lot of people have been saying similar things about how much you play as a caster as well across different games. And so there's an interesting connection, I think, to a lot of different parts of esports in this. But great article. Props to Mort for putting himself through that and then writing this. He continues to be a dev that kind of like goes above and beyond what I've seen devs do in the past. So I was thrilled with it. Hopefully he never puts himself through something like that again, but it was educational for the rest of us. What was the two of yours reactions to that? Start with you. We'll start with you, Aessah. Go ahead.
Well, as some of you guys might know, I used to work on the playtest team for Riot for 2 years. We work really closely with developers, and I just think, I guess the way I look at this when I say like expectations, like people expect like all kinds of things, and they just don't have to be reasonable, right? Because he's working full time, and obviously there are people who are working full time who are a challenger. I don't know, like I guess like Socks like just had a kid. I think he's also working and obviously very high rank, but it's like he's not only just working full time on the game, he's also like he cast like I know I played in like a tournament that he casted in Alicoin, and then he's also like responding on Twitter all the time, he's streaming, like he's doing all this other stuff too. So it's
He's
like
putting in more than an 8-hour day. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's like he's working more than full time already on TFT, and then it's like I guess like when I read the statement expectations to be highly ranked as a dev, I just think that's kind of like it's like expectations that I become a millionaire if I buy Bitcoin or something like that, right? It's just like some people do have those expectations, but like they need to just yeah.
Well, it's basically like saying like if your job is to build cars, or design cars, then when you go home, you should really be spending your time repairing people's cars so you know more about cars, right? It's like, but again, that's the whole work-life balance thing. I mean, sure, you could argue that there's maybe things that can benefit you in that case, but it just screws your life up so much that it's not worth it most of the time. And like I want to hear Dan's thoughts on this too, because you're also someone who has a full-time job and has hit Challenger. But then again, your full-time job is not TFT. You get to have that separation between those two things.
Yeah, reading this article, I can relate to more to a certain extent. Obviously, I do not touch TFT the way he does, but having job and responsibilities to a much lesser degree and trying to play as much TFT as I can, because for me, the reason why I try to push to at least be challenger and above in TFT is because that's just my own personal strive for excellence. I don't really hold other people to that kind of standard. It's up to really them that they want to present themselves that way. So it's more about my own ego and pride that I have to keep playing the game and try to be high ranked. For more, the reason why I think that devs don't necessarily need to be high ranked in general is because they're not designing just for the high ranked players. And I think that's where a lot of these top challenger players, or even players who are hard stuck masters like 100 LP and think that they understand the game in a really deep way, and they really don't, need a reality check. They need to understand that they are such a small percentage of the player base that if we only design the game to cater to what they want, then those are the only players that will be happy. You have to have a game like a TFT that touches so many different kinds of players across the entire world, right? There's an entire different vast range and variety of expectations that people want, all the way from iron, bronze, silver to the very top of challenger. And I think with that said, it's not an absolute requirement for devs to be high ranked. What more important is that devs to be effective at, game design, and like their ideas are original and creative, that that they understand the tech behind it, right? There's a lot of bugs that's been introduced in the past few months of TFT that, quite frankly, some of them are game breaking, some of them are pretty light, but that's important for game developers. They need to be good at communicating and being able to listen to feedback. These are much more important skills that we have long past. We are so past beyond the point of expecting players to be good at the game that it's just completely unreasonable to ask the lead developer of the game, who already does so much. He streams in his free time. He answers the questions, right? He's always soliciting feedback and kind of being the point of head there. He obviously has his own family. He's been very open about his own personal responsibilities that he has with his child, as well as trying to handle everything there. I mean, the man has so much on his plate, and I am just so glad that he did not burn out, because he basically said he got pushed to his window. So, we definitely have a problem with pendulum swinging in TFT. I think we go from this game is terrible, it's a joke, it's awful, to Mort Dog is the best thing that ever happened to video games in the past 100 years. We need some sort of balance, both in TFT and also in the discourse in the TFT community. Please.
Well, Frodan, I've got some bad news for you. All of this is happening on the internet, which apparently has become a place where there is no nuanced discourse. Oh, what do you know? This swung on the screen at exactly the right time. I think let's move on with this, because here's a bit of discourse about teamfight tactics that maybe wasn't the most nuanced I've ever read. And so this is a great example of this too, where I think Soju wrote this twit longer, obviously, about the state of 6.5 and that. And, I think he did present a lot of good points in here. I think he did articulate a lot of real frustrations that people have with the game, and especially from his perspective as a pro player. But the way you do it is important, that you have to, especially if you care about what you're saying, you have to be able to communicate that effectively. And when I say effectively, I mean you have to communicate it in a way that's going to spur the change you're looking for, right? And when you call, the game a joke, when you call the devs lazy, that is not doing it in an effective way, So to kind of piggyback onto what Frodan said, yeah, let's have some nuanced discussion about the game, because every game, every esport is going to have its problems that need to be solved, but we can't act like the world is ending whenever we talk about it. We have to, be more nuanced, get out what we're trying to say in an effective way, and that's the quicker way to a dev's heart is, of course, appreciating what they do, but also communicating what you want changed in a way that's, not totally insulting, right? So that's my spiel on Soju's thing. Aessah, you were gonna say something. I kind of cut you off a little bit. So what were you gonna say? And then what are your thoughts on the Soju twit longer?
I think what Frodan said about it being a small percentage, challenger players being a small percentage of the total player base is really good. And to add to that, I would say part of what gets you there is to be able to identify those things that are not supposed to be like maybe you play a unit, for example, Soko. Like Soko's a kind of obvious one, but there have been much less obvious ones in the past, where it's like the challenger player might know to play this unit, even though it has no synergy tags, just because it's a good unit. Um, so I think like it's kind of, if anything, that's an advantage for the good player to be able to identify those things. And I think it's like
Yeah.
that helps you out if you can recognize that something is like not balanced. Where it's like, okay, in a completely balanced world, I buy, let's just say Draven and Irelia at the same amount of time, but I can recognize that, hey, this one of these units is better, so I'm going to adjust my gameplay to that. That's like, that should help you out if anything. So it's like, I don't see why you would complain about that, I guess.
I mean, and that's the thing too, is that another, I think, danger of writing something that's so strongly worded is that not every player is going to have the same perspective on what is fun in a game as you do, you know? So acting like this is the only opinion that's correct is a little bit, I think, dangerous for a community as well, because you don't want to get in a situation where there is only one opinion that can be correct and everything else is incorrect, right? Because in the real world and in gaming and in esports, there's lots of opinions that are valid and need to be sort of treated with respect. Frodan, what do you have to say?
Oh man, I have too much to say about this kind of stuff. So let's just go from the very top. First of all, I like that Soju is at least willing to communicate his thoughts in long form, and take it seriously. Yeah. You can tell that he put effort and thought into this post, and I appreciate that because, you know, like it or not, you know, Soju is the ambassador of Western TFT. Right? He is the biggest content creator on Twitch, and as a result, has a lot of clout. And what he says influences and affects a lot of people's opinions onto the game, for better or for worse. When Set 6 was out and the dude was playing 1,500 games and was talking about how awesome the set was, everyone loved it, right? And was all into it. And when he doesn't like certain things, he affects fans that way. That's just kind of how the deal works, right? People can't be upset that Soju is like turning off some players. He's just speaking his opinion, and he doesn't like the release state of 6.5. That's totally okay. But the big problem is, in true Soju fashion, everything is going great. And then all of a sudden, in just like one sentence, right? In one turn, he decides to fast 9, roll twice, and die. In this case, it was going great until he just uses completely inflammatory language out of nowhere and then goes back to being completely reasonable. And if you just take out like 3 sentences from this tweet longer, it's a completely reasonable post. But he just had to squeeze it in because, you know, I guess he wanted to really express himself, and it's really natural. So I want people to from both sides to really understand 2 things. One, there's a lot of really good things in this post that Soju's identifying, and I think that there's a lot of valid criticisms, and ultimately I agree with almost everything that he said. But the other side of it too is that a lot of this stuff can be fixed. A lot of this stuff can be fixed. I'm not sure about competitive TFT, the state of that, and all the different things that could be fixed. That has to do a lot to do with Riot. But, you know, it's part of it is that Set 6 was just that good. And any 0.5 set that comes off of it, in the spot where there's augment balance, there's trait balance, there's champion balance, there's item balance, right? That all fits into this giant complex equation with billions of variables. Every release from this set forward that has augments is going to be highly imbalanced. It's just what's going to happen. There's too many things and too many equations and variables. And when you compare that to the end of a set, it always just feels like something is off. Absolutely. But, you know, I do think that a couple of other design things, right? They talk about repetitive traits. Warwick and Tryndamere both being Chemtech challengers. Vi and Sejuani both being Enforcer bruisers. Jarvan and Sivir both being Hextech strikers. That part, I think, is completely valid. And I think that there's so much good stuff here. And so the feedback of this is Soju should not be afraid to post things like this in the future. He did a lot of good stuff. But also, man, just have someone read it over before you post it.
Yeah, he's big enough.
Take out like
he
2
needs like a PR manager or something, you know?
Yeah. I can speak a lot more, and it's not my own personal stream. Sorry, Aesah, go ahead.
I was just saying, like, I don't think it's that unreasonable, and it's just like I've watched his stream a lot, and a lot of times, you know, if he thinks like the situation's like if something a little bit bad happens, like he loses one fight in stage 2, he'll say it's an 8th. He wins the fight, but he say, oh, it's the first, you know. So it's like it's just like kind of his just the way he talks to be hyperbolic, and I know like working from like the game dev side is very frustrating when someone's like, oh man, like the devs suck or whatever. But I don't think, yeah, I mean, I don't think this is. I read this post. I can totally understand like that it would be really frustrating as a dev to be like, oh, to read something that's like the state of TFT is a joke, but I don't think it was like, I don't think it was unreasonable. And I mean, he's been playing, he's really invested in TFT, and he's frustrated. And I agree with what Frodan said. It's good that he's like sharing his thoughts, and that's, yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah, I want to say one last thing is that outside of Mortdog and the Riot devs, there's probably not many more people on the entire planet that care more about the state of teamfight tactics than Soju. There's very few people that care as much as he does. The dude has committed some of the best years of his young adulthood, where he literally streams 30 hours straight repeatedly for weeks. And you're telling me this guy doesn't really care? Like, come on. He's one of the people that cares the most, and that's why he posts something.
Yeah, you can also say that like he's probably had these thoughts on his mind for a long time, and he probably chose to write it down and publish it like during like his like peak of like negative emotion about TFT, right? So it's probably
written after an eighth. Yeah. Let's be real. Yep.
After 3 econ augments at stage 3.
Those thoughts were there. Oh yeah,
stage 4.
He hit that augment board. He's like, it's time. Yeah, that's I'm pretty sure.
So yeah, I mean, it's understandable to be like emotional, and it's just yeah,
it is. But when the thing is whenever you make a post like this, or whenever you're thinking about posting something from an emotional state, I always go through three rules that I always encourage like my casting interns to go through, and the high school students and college students I work with whenever they're going to post on media. I always say, ask yourself these 3 things if you're ever the least little bit worried about where you're going to post. Say, does it need to be said? So ask yourself that first. Does it need to be said by me? That's the second thing. And does it need to be said by me right now? And I think if you look at this, does it need to be said? Yeah, I'd agree with that. Does it need to be said by Soju? Yeah, I mean, think he's a good person to say this. Does it need to be said by him right now? Right after that eighth, right after you're in that emotional state? That's where I think things went a little bit wrong. And if you take a little bit of time and wait, maybe type it up, then come back to the next day, take out some of this inflammatory stuff, it gets a little bit better. It gets a little bit more effective. So that's my perspective on it anyway. Let's go through those 3 rules. I think it helps a lot. But there was a response that came in from none other than Mortdog himself.
Real quick,
of course.
I want to say like one other thing with Soju is like, I don't know, obviously like I don't know what's going on in his head, but it like he hasn't been streaming as much, maybe because he's not enjoying it, which is perfectly reasonable. But I think like maybe he feels like he's letting down his fans, so he wants to like kind of like apologize to them as well and be like, hey, like I don't know, but yeah,
no, it's true. Part of it is that he it is his job, right? Streaming is his job, and so he has to be accountable to somebody, right?
Sure.
In this case, it's to his community, and a lot of what he said does feel like there are traces of burnout as well, right? Like, again, we're about to talk about Mortdog's response here, and we don't have to go too much in depth with it because Mort basically had a very measured take, and he's also in chat right now. The TLDR of Mortdog's response was, a lot of this is right, but at the same time, like, you can come to us and talk to us directly. The one thing that stood out to me when Mort was saying is, how a lot of players meme and joke about how certain like TFT devs just leave the team, or it's a small team. They can get really discouraged by stuff like this, and having them apply to things like the Riot MMO, right? It's kind of like an internal joke within some of the high elo community. Doing stuff like this that really discourages them is something that is a very real impact. So we just have to be more mindful.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot.
Yeah, that was a big moment in Mort's response that like hit me too, where he's like, do you want people to leave the team and go to some other part of Riot? Like, this is the way you make that happen, and we don't want that. We like the people that are working on TFT right now, and we hope they continue to do it because they're doing a good job. And I've been around devs and games for over a decade now, and I've never ever met a lazy one. So that's another thing that kind of stands out now too, is that like whenever anyone calls a dev lazy, like I've never met a lazy dev. I'm pretty sure they don't exist. Maybe there's a few out there somewhere, but yes. I've never met them. They're all the ones I've met have been very hardworking and very passionate about the game they're making and want to make it fun for people. So in the end, is always
they're paid as well.
Yeah, yeah, and overworked too. The crunch the
Overworked,
devs is like it's
underpaid.
not a joke, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like at the end of the day, you know, it's perfectly fine and acceptable and sometimes important to voice your criticisms about the games that you like, especially if it's an esport that you're passionate about. But just make sure you're doing it. And I'm not even going to say in a nice way. I'm just going to say make sure you're doing it in an effective way. You know, if you're doing it in a way that's just going to make the person on the other side angry, they're not going to be receptive to what you're saying anyway. So if you really care about what you're saying, do it in a way that is going to actually produce results. So results rather. So there you go. I think we're all in agreement for this one. But speaking of agreement, it's time to move on to our next section of the show, which is, I bet you can guess, it's agree. So or
Is it?
agree? Oh no, it's the augment. Is it?
It is the
Wait.
Augment.
In my run of show, agree is after
well,
news.
I mean, it
oh,
says,
but on the left side of the
on our
screen it says
side,
augment.
yeah.
All right, I was going by the document. We'll go by the screen. Let's check out the augment. Okay,
Let's
so never
skip.
mind. We'll get to agree later. No, we're not skipping it. This is the best part, isn't it? This is the part where you get to draw a champion.
Oh,
For
okay.
us.
All right.
That's right. So
I don't know if
you
this is
draw
going to be
it.
the best part, but it's going to be a part.
It'll be great. So
It'll be a segment.
yeah,
Okay,
it'll be a
so,
segment. Yeah.
For people who are, joining halfway in, Aesah is going to draw his favorite TFT champion, and we have to guess it. I don't know if there's a time limit, but this was a poll voted upon as part of our augments to start things off.
Yeah.
Okay, so we start off with a Ninja Turtle.
Oh,
Donatello.
oh, he's got purple. Yeah, so it looks like
Leonardo?
Donatello there. Wait, what? What? Okay, there's
Raphael.
the one arm. We got some sort of flippers,
Okay.
kind of adult.
You guys are mean.
No, we're just.
Michelangelo!
I'm calling him like I'm seeing. Oh wait, is that lightning coming out?
Pikachu!
Wait. Is that the Emperor? from
Okay,
Star
so
Wars The Mask?
something that with lightning.
Wait,
Should-
why is this
so-
so big
Is
now?
it Sivir pre?
Wait, can you give us
pre-nerf?
one hint,
Static
Aesah?
Shiv?
When did you start playing TFT?
I started playing set 1.
Okay, so you started
Okay.
from the very beginning.
Oh, so I guess we didn't clarify that it needed to be a champion from this set. True.
Oh, it's not from the set.
Oh, so
I
is
didn't
it-
realize.
Oh,
it was supposed
okay,
to be.
okay.
I didn't know it was supposed to be
thinking
from
about
the
this
set.
set. I was thinking about this.
No,
set.
it's not from the
Me
set.
too.
Oh, I
Anything
didn't
that has
realize.
lightning, Kennen.
I
does lightning.
yeah. Is it Kennen?
The Flash Rat.
It's not canon.
It's not Kennen. Oh my
Uh,
gosh. It's even got the ninja thing. The
Well,
ninja
Zed.
mask.
is it Zed?
It is
Wait.
Zed.
Oh, it's Zed. There's
Oh,
the throwing
yeah,
star.
I like it.
Oh,
I thought
okay.
sure it
Yeah.
did. Hey, not
What were
bad.
the little yellow squigglies then? What was that?
It's
Electric.
It's electric.
Oh, okay. So it's still
Yeah.
TFT Zed. All right. Got it. Yeah. Those
Zed
are the
too,
days.
Zed.
Seeing 30 Zeds on the board.
Man,
All right,
can
I thought you guys were just
imagine-
being mean to me, but I'm reading these responses in Twitch, and I guess my drawing wasn't as good as I thought it was. Because apparently no one knows what it is.
Like, I was thrown off because I was expecting it to be from this set, so that was my bad. If I had to open my mind to the possibilities of other sets. So no, now I can totally see Zed right away.
I just understand that not everyone can appreciate great art, so it's
Hey.
fine.
It's true.
Turn
it's
that
true.
into an NFT, man. You'll make bank. You know, someone's gonna pay $100,000 for that.
Okay, so I'm looking at chat, and I like Ninja Ramus. That is also not a TFT champion, but that would be
Yep.
pretty epic.
I think Kennen could work. Kennen was Mort's guess as well. I think that was fair. But
Set
no
2
ears,
Zed.
though.
Okay, so people who don't know for Set 2 Zed, Set 2 was about the theme of elements, right? And
Mm.
each champion's origin trait was an element like electric or ocean or poison or crystal, like all these different like resources you'd find around Runeterra. Zed was a 5-cost legendary that was 3 tags. He was electric. He was an assassin. He was also a summoner, and his ability would be that he summoned a clone of himself. And so if you gave him things like Guardian Angel, he would end up dying, but in his ability to cast through Guardian Angel, he would summon another one, and that clone could summon another Zed, and then you would give it Redemption, and Redemption back then was a one-time burst heal. So what ended up happening was he would die with Guardian Angel, summon a clone, that clone would die, summon another clone, and then Redemption would pop and heal all 3 to full health, and those 3 would summon 3 more, and those 6 would summon 12 more. It was just absolutely bananas. Now, can you imagine set 2Z with like Darkstar Mutant. Holy moly. This kinds of stuff, like, you know, Moore said that summons in general were so buggy for the game that they probably won't ever do something like that again. But man, it was some crazy stuff because there was legit a 1v50 like Naruto fight against like the Shadow Kage Bunshins, where a 3-star Nocturne who would deal AoE damage to everything around him would face off against a board of 50 Zeds. And it was like some of the craziest fights we've ever seen in TF. It was pretty.
Set 2 is fun. Like set 2 is like when I first started. I played set 1, but set 2 is when I started like really actually trying to learn the game, and like, man, those Zed boards were really fun. I have fond memories of the elemental hexes and all that. It was good. Ocean mages for life. But, that was a lovely drawing, Aesah. We got
Very
it
effective,
pretty much right away, I'd say. You know, it's no, it wasn't tough at all. Yeah, great drawing. Yeah. Well, we don't have to agree with that, but we do have to agree with this next question, which is 3 trait champions should only be 3 cost or higher. Aesah.
Oh, that's a hard disagree for me.
Okay.
I think there's no reason. I think like a very like black or white, like it just like limits the design space. I mean, Mordog talked in reply how he was like, oh yeah, you know, like Rek'Sai and Sejuani are both really good champions with 3 traits, and they're naturally going to be played together, and that may have maybe been a mistake making them both so strong and just like everything. But I mean, I don't think there should ever be like a black or white rule like this at all.
All right. Fair enough. How about you, Frodan?
The problem with triple trait champions is when they all kind of like the fact is that they all kind of work together. I think like there's more 3 trait bruisers than non 3 trait bruisers in the game, because Vi is a triple trait, Tom Kent is a triple trait, and there's just a lot of triple traits going on in the bruiser tree. So I disagree with this. I just think part of it was the allocation of it. And going back a little bit to what Mordog said, like he acknowledges, he said, hey, actually, maybe we overdid it. But also what I really like was Moore says, maybe we're thinking about it wrong. Maybe it's that we should be doing more triple traits instead of less. And I like that they're able to think that. And I think that's what great game devs do, which is they take a complaint and say, instead of just trying to immediately say, hey, you're right, let's just take that back and walk backwards. They say, well, what if? And then they like iterate upon that process. And I think that's a good stuff.
Fair enough. So that's a disagree for you. Is that right? I don't see your marker yet.
Oh, it's a disagree. Yeah.
Okay. All right. You know, I will give me a disagree and an agree with this, because I'm on the fence about this one, because while I agree with what you've both been saying, I do think that having 3 cost champions in the 1 and 2 slot categories can possibly lead to situations where certain traits, certain champions are just stronger than others in a way that's hard to sort of like balance around, just because they have so many synergies. So I don't want to see this happen, but I kind of wonder a little bit. So I'm gonna be wishy-washy with this one. I'm gonna be sort of like on the fence about it. Yeah. So
okay,
let's move on to the next one. Our next agree question.
Kind of related, actually.
It's that's right. Our second 3 cost question. There should be more triple trait units, not fewer. So Frodan touched on that a little bit.
Yeah.
But so let's get your impression first on this one. Agree?
Yeah. So I think the reason why we wanted to follow up, because this was something that was said by Mort in his response video. So we didn't actually quote it exactly, but it's one of these things I thought was pretty interesting. Part of what makes triple trait units really interesting is that they are a really important fulcrum of where you can actually pivot in TFT. Because the more traits that you have, theoretically, the less expensive transitions cost. In TFT, to do a crazy pivot, usually just the more far removed it is from your tree, the more gold it takes. And there's never any board that's impossible to pivot. It's all about how many resources you're able to actually allocate towards that. And triple trait units introduce like a really important opportunity for you to have some solid fundamentals of your composition that you don't have to sell, because it can launch pad you into so many different areas. And so when Moore said that we should have more, it says, well, what does a game like TFT look like if there's like so many of them are triple trait that you almost feel like you're just going to hit all these kinds of synergies no matter what? The more I think about it, the more I disagree with it, because I think there's a lot of noise. And what I like about TFT more than anything is that there's trade-offs. I really like the idea of risk and reward and how it's constantly being balanced. So I wouldn't want there to be like the majority of them are triple traits, because now they even make it feel worse to have a 2-trait. And then at that point, now we're having like trait creep, which is not exactly something that exists currently in TFT, but we got a little bit close with it in this set, I think.
All right. Well, Aessah, agree or disagree?
I don't think there should be. I think TFT is already like a really complicated game, and I'm just thinking like imagine if every unit, or let's say half the units even had like 3 traits. It would just be like so complex, like the amount of like boards and synergies you can put together. I think it's already like very difficult. I mean, it takes like an entire set to like learn like what kind of like boards give you like perfect synergies and stuff like that. So
Okay.
yeah, I don't think there should be more. Mainly because like the TFT complexity is enough, and like it gives like kind of different boards their uniqueness. And if there's more triple traits, then I could see it's like where 2 people are running like the same 6 units, and that gives them most of their core synergies, and then they just have like a different carry or something. And that's not as exciting as like, oh, this guy's running like a Hex Tech board versus like this other guy's running like a 3 Socialite Aurelia board, even though they're both running like a striker main carry.
Right. Okay. So disagree from Dan and from Aessah. I'm gonna have to disagree with this one too, and I feel a little bit both ways on this one as well. But I'm gonna lean into disagree just because I don't want to get into a situation in the game where there isn't enough sort of like compositional identity, right? Where, you know, if there's a lot of 3 traits, then a lot of things start working together, and then, you know, you don't really see as much I think unique results at the end of the game with a lot of comps. So I think maybe you could add a couple more in, but I kind of think triple trait should be something really special. You know, I think it should be something that only a couple champions get each set, because then those are champions that are, you know, notable for that. Even if their ability isn't super great, you know, then they can fit into more comps than others. So I think it's a neat sort of like lever on the developer side of things to make a champion more appealing without necessarily make them stronger, you know? So I think it should be left to be a special thing, and so I'll disagree. What's interesting though is that chat actually agrees with this. They want more triple trait units, which is not what I've been seeing about Sejuani and Rek'Sai on Reddit lately. So I'm kind of surprised about that one. That is interesting.
Yeah, if we were to do it, I think they just have to raise the thresholds. Not a lot of like two synergy activators, right? It has to be a little bit harder to hit, just because otherwise the synergy bar becomes unreadable, right? Like, as much as it's cool to have entire menu, like a CVS receipt of synergies, like you don't. It's just hard to actually parse, right? Like, what is actually relevant to your board? You don't want to have too much.
Something that's also interesting, I'm not sure if this is like an intentional design decision, but I noticed like a lot of the triple trait champions are also just like some of the strongest champions without traits. For example, at the end of set 6, the highest win rate 3 cross was Echo, and then they gave him a trait. And I noticed like a lot of the same thing, like for me, I played a lot of 5.5, and like some of the strongest units in the game were like Fiddlesticks, Aurelia, Galio, and like, so I'm not sure if it was like kind of intentional that the really strong units were also triple trait. But to me, I feel like if it has an extra trait, it should be a weaker unit as like a trade off. But I'm not sure.
Okay, I think you kind of do it both ways.
I'm okay with legendaries being strong.
Yeah, legendaries, it feels like well, the triple trait thing comes into legendaries because it seems like so many of them have their own unique traits too, which is, you know, fine, because then I think you give them 2 traits just so they fit into multiple compositions. I like it.
Yeah, I don't think of like Jace or Yumi or like Tom Kench. I don't think of them as like triple trait champions because with like a 1 out of 1.
Fair enough.
But they are, and it's important that they are for Stand United.
For Stand United, yeah, but that's pretty much the only thing.
Stand United.
It is incredibly relevant right now. So.
All right, well let's go on to the next agree question. We'll get away from the triple trait talk for the moment anyway. Mid-set should have a full ranked reset instead of a soft reset. This is kind of an interesting question, something I hadn't thought of before, but it'll be interesting to discuss it now. So Aessah, agree?
I'm not sure I understand what the difference is. It's saying like if you're a challenger, you have to start at iron. I hard disagree with that because it's like it just forces you to play more games again. Like you're just gonna you're gonna win lobbies with 100 HP for like your first 10 games, and
yeah,
I think I know some people like feel like they're hard stuck in like whatever they are, platinum or whatever, and they feel like, oh, if I get a full reset, like I can't gain LP because when I win, I gain like only like this much. When I lose way more, and they feel like they can't climb. But like that's because like they lost a bunch of games right after and the demotion protection. Basically, like the only people who feel like they are hard stuck. The only reason they're hard stuck is because they're not getting better at the game. It's not because a rank reset is not going to help them. They're going to be the same rank anyway. So I hard disagree with this.
Okay, Frodan, what do you think?
It would be fun to play in some bronze
games. I disagree because if you, for one thing, we can just call it what it is. Like a lot of players in TFT have the second account. Like a lot. Actually, I can't tell you one person that I know that plays TFT that doesn't have a second account. If you want a full rank reset, make another account. TFT is completely free to play, which is one of the best things about the game. Why you should try it if you haven't already. What the purpose of a full rank reset? I think what it ends up doing is it might sound like okay in theory to try to have people like re-earn the rank that they're supposed to, but what you end up doing is kind of making it exhaustive to have people have to climb again from the casual perspective. And I know this because my wife, we play also a different auto battler, just, of course, because we come from Hearthstone, so we play a lot of Hearthstone Battlegrounds. Gosh, and every reset, she kind of tilts. She's just like, I worked really hard to get to my rating, and it's thousands and thousands and thousands of MMR. And you're telling me I have to start back from zero, because the visual of it just looks really poor when you just have to start from what feels like another mammoth climb. And ever since that moment happened, that was like a year or two ago, I've been very acutely aware of what it feels like to have almost like the entirety of your work kind of destroyed in front of your eyes, and how important it is because it creates an exit point for players. It's like, okay, well, if that's the case, then I'm just done with TFT. Like, I'm good. And for players who get a soft reset, they still have to climb a little bit, but in the reality, it's also a really interesting time because I see a lot of Diamond players who are kind of like low masters. They get a chance to play against good players who also were in Diamond, who are challenger players. And I think that's a really interesting time in the season. So I think we're good right now.
Yeah, it is. It is a fun time. I've been enjoying it the last few days. With this, I think I'm going to agree with, not agree. I'm going to agree with you two and disagree with the agree, actually, where I think a full reset is good between full sets because, you would think the skills for set 6 don't necessarily reflect too much on the skills from set 5 aside from just the core mechanics of TFT. So I think it's good to make everybody go back to the basics between full sets, but in mid-set, I would rather just do a partial ranked reset as well because, like Frodan has said, you did a lot of work to get to this point, and things haven't really changed enough to warrant going back to the very beginning again. It probably would feel too worse for a lot of players. So yeah. I think it's interesting to think about, but I am going to disagree with this as well. It looks like chat mostly disagrees as well. 88%, which is actually less one-sided than I thought it would be with this. But that means 12% of people out there want a full ranked reset at the mid-set. Interesting.
I mean, Frodan said, you could just make a new account if that's what you want. So.
Yeah, if that's what you're itching for. Yeah, this isn't a roguelike. We're not trying to start from the very beginning, it's not Dark Souls. You don't start from the very beginning for losing,
Well, that's the thing is like if you're worried about your MMR, your hidden MMR getting hurt too badly by losing a lot, you're playing really poorly. Yeah, make a new account, play on a different account, and just focus on learning the game and not caring what your results are, right? And then once you get, I do this pretty much once a set usually, where if I'm feeling bad, like just today, I went on an alt account and played some games, and I want to get more comfortable with the set. And even if the games aren't like as hard, I'm still getting better at going through the comps I'm thinking of in my head. So when I go back to my main account, hopefully I don't lose as much LP. So yeah.
I actually never play on an alt account just because of the soft resets. It takes too long for me to get my alt account up. Like it's like the low elo games are just like so not interesting. That's like I basically have to spend like I think of it as like an MMO where it's like you have to spend 5 hours grinding so you can like compete in actual real games. And it's like so I don't even have an alt account because of the soft reset.
For me, it's usually for like testing crazy stuff that I wouldn't ever want to test on my main, and then it's like just going through and seeing how the synergies play out, even if you're playing against, worse players. But yeah, if you're looking for good games, then yeah, you're not going to find them immediately on an alt account for sure. But let's go on to our final agree question of the show. It is TFT tournaments should be more like poker tournaments, pre-recorded segments, and less like esports tournaments, live, full broadcast. That's really interesting, and this is something that we've talked about a lot in the TFT since basically the very beginning, because of the lack of spectator mode, things like that. But what do you think, Aesah, having come from the poker world to a certain extent? What are your thoughts on this one? Agree?
Okay, first of all, I want to know who wrote this question and how much poker they watch, because I'm pretty sure most poker tournaments are broadcasted live.
I wrote this one, and what I'm talking about is more like the poker tournaments that are well known and popular, because there are several different kind of broadcast series, right? There's like World Poker. There's the World Series of Poker, and there's also like World Poker Tour and a bunch of other different kinds of broadcasts that are varied in between.
Okay, but
And we're talking about like how people can approach a broadcast that people have consumed on mainstream television.
I guess what I'm saying is, so like the World Series, I think of that basically. Let's just like as the pretty much like the only big one. I mean, there's some other ones like WPT, but that is like it is broadcasted live. But you're saying people can also consume the people can also consume like the VODs, and the way I look at it is like TFT is the same way. Like people can they can watch it live or they can watch the VODs.
Yes, but they don't also have like the poker. So while there are broadcasts like that, this is just I think you're nitpicking on the parentheses and not necessarily talking about what poker tournaments, how they present them, because it's not necessarily.
I'm not understanding. Yeah.
Okay, so poker tournaments, they focus a lot. They jump from like table to table. They're not really getting context of what the table has been doing up until this point, especially like as they start to wind down, right? They're kind of hopping around and catching on.
Just sitting in with the table for a certain amount of time.
I got you.
So the presentation style is almost completely different with like how we would follow a traditional sport broadcast.
It's very player focused rather than like lobby focused per se.
I see.
I see. We'd just be watching Soju or something for like.
Or part of it, or maybe just like the exciting moments of Soju's gameplay. It's almost kind of like a YouTube highlight reel.
Yeah, I completely misunderstood, but I get it now where it's like, okay, there's 8 lobbies going on, and it's like, behind the scenes, we're tracking, okay, this is a really exciting fight, we're going to broadcast that next, and we have something else lined up to show right after it. I don't know, I'm not sure, honestly, on this one, because a lot of times with the TFT tournaments, I think a lot more people are, like, watching the TFT Tactics channel on Twitch as a whole grows a lot. But the like official broadcast does not have like the lion's share of those viewers. So I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure if that's what people are looking for. And I know like production value wise, it seems like it'd be a lot of work to do it like that. So I guess I think it could be good if it's not too much. Like if we don't take into account like how much work it'll be. I think it could be good because it's like if you want to just watch like one player's perspective, you have that opportunity by watching that player stream. But if you want those highlights, then you can go to like the main broadcast too. I think that's reasonable. So yeah, I guess I'll say agree for this one. But yeah, I'll only say agree because the alternative is also still available. Then you have like both the best of both worlds. I think if there's only the main broadcast, I think the way it is right now is good because a lot of the very core decisions in TFT like are not like those like flashy fights.
It's true. It's true. I actually, I mean, my answer is almost exactly similar to Aesah's, which is I say why not both? I think that in my dream world, what it is you go to a website called watchtft.com or something. And in this website, it would give you the option of everything. You can click on it like a 3x3 grid and click on Aesah's perspective, on Soju's perspective, on Kia's perspective, whatever's in the game. And then in the center is like something that like the central broadcast. You can watch it, and that central broadcast can also teleport you to a different board and say like, while this is happening, picture in picture, like take a look at this incredible mercenaries cash out happening in lobby B, and then that's where Solus and all them are playing. And then you're kind of warping back, but almost like you're transported back immediately as if you never left off. There's so many different things that you can do that makes a TFT tournament compelling. Problem is resource and development. We just don't have the ability to do that right now. But as time goes on and if TFT continues to be successful, I imagine a world where this could be. So I would love a more poker style tournament because honestly, I think TFT is really exciting, especially when you can show some of the crazy moments behind it. So I guess like a soft agree for me as well. I would like I would like us to explore this concept a little bit more before we just say no.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on that and agree with this as well because there's obviously a lot more that can be done with TFT tournaments. I'd love a world where we had that 3v3 grid, and then you could choose what audio you listen to too. You know, say you want to watch one player's perspective, but you still want to hear what the casters and the analysts are saying about the other boards that are going on. So you get a sense of what's happening in the game at large while you watch one player's perspective too. I think being able to choose the audio is equally as important as being able to choose the video. The fact is, right now, there isn't enough money in TFT esports production to support this kind of thing. It's not that the technology doesn't exist, it's that there isn't enough money to implement that technology right now. And so for this type of thing to happen, we would need, my voice is really scratchy right now for some reason. We would need two things to happen. One is we would need third-party broadcasters to be able to have a better, be able to sell more partnerships and sponsorships and make more money from the broadcast to support this kind of thing. And Riot would also need to pony up and pay these broadcasters more to implement this stuff as well, too. There's not a ton of money being put into TFT broadcasting right now, which if you look at the main screen, the main stream for a lot of these tournaments, the viewership isn't like spectacular. You know, it is a smaller niche game despite having a huge player base. A lot of people want to watch, the individual player streams too. But I do agree that if the money is put into it, it could create this really cool experience where you could get all of that and get a lot of value from it and bring more people in because they can watch it in this more approachable way. But, with all this stuff at the end of the day, like it takes money, and until people are willing to invest in it, we're going to kind of be where we're at, So that's not a criticism of Riot right now. That's just sort of a statement of the reality of the situation is right now, because I can't necessarily disagree with what they're doing, but me in my TFT esports loving heart would love to see more invested into the scene. So we'll hope that happens in the future. Yeah. But that was agree, and that's always fun. Now it's time to move on to everybody else's favorite segment as well, which is esports. We just talked about esports for a little bit already, but let's talk a little bit more about esports. We've got not as much to talk about. Some upcoming things coming up, like Hex Tech Havoc, with some of the most wonderful collection of hair and facial hair in the business between Admirable Frodan and Mean Mr. Keen. Frodan,
wait, you guys can hear me? My audio completely cut out.
You want to talk about this one while Aesah gets the audio situation fixed there?
This is a double up
my
tournament.
Discord is out for
the one that was supposed to happen and ended up getting postponed. It didn't get canceled. I'll be casting alongside Admirable and Keen. And double up is a format that, in the words of Milk, has a higher potential than even solos, which is something that was pretty interesting. Milk believes that the skill expression ceiling is incredibly high in double up, which gets me very excited that a top level player like that doesn't dismiss it, because it's kind of in contrast to Soju. Soju's not he's not super intrigued by double up competitions. Someone like Milk is. So I'm curious to see how will they do. I think from North America we have Ramblin' Robin competing, which should be fun. I don't know how much time they've been putting in, because I know Ramblin' took a little break from TFT just to kind of reset his mind before the grind, since he already qualified for regionals. So we'll see.
Cool. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I like what you're saying about like different pros have different sort of approaches with double up as far as like how much they value it versus individual competition. And I think it's always healthy when you have very differing opinions, because that means that there's something for everybody in a lot of cases. But Aesah, what do you think as far as like the competitive possibilities of double up as an esport?
I mean, from what I can tell, it seems like a lot of people enjoy playing double up. I think the biggest issue, in my opinion, is the ladder system for double up. And we were just talking about how grindy it is to get up of all. I don't know how many double up games I played, but I feel like, I'm pretty good at the game. Most of my double up opponents are against gold players. No offense, gold players, but I don't even think I reached the highest tier in a lot of games. And so I think most people I talk to they double up is fun, and it's definitely equal if not higher skill expression. But yeah, I just think it's too what's the word, restricted. It's too inaccessible, because let's say I'm trying to qualify for like Zon Cup or something, or like Challenger Series, like I just can't play that many double up games, and I think it's really showing that it's like you don't really need to be that high up on double up ladder because I think like Ramblin plus Robin, as well as Milk plus Soju, I don't think either one of them were like even close to high rated on the double up ladder, but they clearly showed that they were like better than the teams that were high rated on the ladder because
Mhm.
you know all like just most of the top TFT players are not playing the format just because it's just the way the ladder is. Like if do like when Milk and Soju were streaming their games, I watched some of them. They were frequently playing against teams, you know, that were like gold in solo queue, which I mean they're like if you're gold in solo queue, you just can't be as good as Milk and Soju and double up, no matter how much more double up experience you have, because the game types are still they're overall very similar.
Right. So I want to try to equate this a little bit. When I think about this, I kind of equate it a little bit to Smash Brothers and Smash tournaments, where we have situations where the premier thing is the individual tournament, but there are duos tournaments at a lot of these as well, especially in Melee. Now, like Dan, I know you have a lot more experience with the Smash scene than I do over the years. So do you think of it that way too, where we could have like a tournament system where we don't necessarily take ladder, but we just take the pros that are at the individual event and they can make their own duos and play in this sort of, I don't want to call it a side event because I still think it's important, but an event that's maybe less premier per se than the individual tournament. Is that a good way to look at it, or what do you think?
I mean, I hope so. I mean, I think that it's even cool if they just have separate events. You know, like
Yeah.
if you look, I'm a big fan of the Olympics. I just finished watching a lot of the Winter Olympics and went back to watch VODs of events that I missed because it's just hard to watch everything. And like they do formats for all kinds of stuff. And honestly, like the gold medal for a solo figure skating competition versus doubles is just as prestigious to me. Like it's really nuanced and really skillful in its own right. So I say both. Like I would love a 250K world championship for solos, and I would love a 250K tournament or 500K, I guess, since it's double the amount of participants
Yeah.
for double up. And I think that it'd be great. And ultimately, I say we shouldn't even stop there. I would love to see 4v4 in TFT and see what that looks like.
Oh man.
I don't know what it is, but like
Yeah, I think that'd
somewhere
be
down the
cool.
road. Yeah, somewhere down
Just
the road. Why not?
follow the bobsled strategy, where it's
And
just like
yeah,
however
that's right.
many permutations of people can be in the bobsled. That's how many events we're doing.
And I think that there's different things that they can play around with in terms of that idea, and
Mhm.
maybe that is the format. The format is like day one is 4v4, then day two is 2v2, then day three is solos. I mean, there's a lot of things we can do and experiment into. Why not?
Well, I think that's part of it too. Is I've never seen an esport where what an ideal tournament format is has been so challenging to sort of like nail down. And I think and even though we're a few years into the game now, I think we're still years away from finding like the ideal TFT tournament format, you know? And so I'm totally on board with Frodan saying like, why don't we play around with it? Why don't we try different things? And some of them are going to be great, some of them aren't going to be so great, but I think we need to experiment to figure it out, you know? And so I'm at least happy to see tournaments like this popping up. Should be fun to watch. Yeah.
Don't
But
miss it.
that's
It's gonna be really early. 4 a.m. is my call time.
that's insane. I might wake up for the end of it. But then there will be the Innovation Cup coming shortly after that. That is March 4th through 6th. We got the top 4 players in the mid-set finale, as well as 28 of the highest ranked players that are coming in there. And yeah, should be good as well. I mean, it's always fun to see who does well at these tournaments and see what the tournament meta that evolves during these events happens. I really love TFT tournaments, despite some of the challenges, like I mentioned, we've had in terms of formats and things. It's always a good time to me, so looking forward to it. Aesah, what do you think when you look ahead to things like the Innovation Cup, things like watching, playing? Like, give me the whole like gamut as far as your look at it, because I know you approach it from sort of a poker mentality, right? Where when you get a group of players this good together, the factors that what is going to determine the best player become fairly minimal, according to what I've heard you say in the past. Is that right?
I mean, minimal is very relative. I think
Okay.
like it's a big difference. Like to me, 10% and 20% is, I guess, like some people will say that's minimal, but to me, it's like that's a lot. Like you're double. like you're double as good as someone basically.
Well, that's big. Those are big percentages.
But like I think a lot of people, I kind of think of that as like kind of the range, something along those lines, and just looking at ladder win rates, right? And assuming like I always I think no one can have a win rate or top four rate in a tournament as high as they can on ladder, just because even if the playstyle is a little different, their playstyle is more suited for it. Ladder is just going to be a lot easier. So basically take whatever your like top four and win rate is on ladder. I don't think you can do better than that in tournament, basically. So yeah, I mean, I think it's like you could go into it being the best player. I mean, but you're not necessarily gonna win. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess just go and do your best, and it's the same as in poker, right? Like you can't guarantee that you win, but you just the only thing you can control that's in your control is just to play your best. So.
Mm. All right, cool. Anything to add on, Frodan?
After the Innovation Cup, we're going to do another power rankings for top 15.
All right.
I guess I can just tell you, we confirmed the guest yesterday night. It'll be Ramkev. Ramkev will be our guest.
Cool.
That'll be on the show talking about stuff, and so it'll be fun. Maybe Aesah will break top 15 in terms of the rankings instead of people's bouts.
Here you go. Vote Aesah. All right. Let's move on to everybody's favorite segment. It is the NA tier list. Now, Aesah, I know you spent hours before the show preparing this. You've come into this totally ready. So let's hear it. You can move people around. You don't need to go in the order from 1 to 10. This is your tier list. So what are you gonna do with it?
I've talked about this before a lot on stream. I'm actually not a huge fan of like tier lists because I think it's just mostly ladder ranking. I think an exception can be made if you have not had a chance to play a lot of games, but
sure,
I have not seen that become relevant in set 6 nor in set 6. In set 6, I should say. In set 6.5, there's obviously some players that are not playing, but I would just generally think the players that are like most consistently like at the top of the ladder, like very consistently, like 1400 LP or higher, I just think are the strongest.
So who would the top 10 of those players be then, in your opinion?
All right, so I'll go ahead and try to think of 10 players. So I think top 3 in my mind, I think of like Ramblin', Milk, and Socks. Setsuko, maybe. So let's say number 1, Ramblin', number 2, Milk, number 3, Setsuko, number 4, Socks, number 5, Dish Soap, number 6, Soju, number 7, who else is up there all the time? Robinson, Solus.
Mm-hmm. You're going real fast.
What I really like is he just. What I really like is he says it's really about LP, and more than half these people are like GM or below right now.
Well, I think right now doesn't. I mean, we just had a reset, right? I'm thinking like who is consistently.
But then you would say who would be the top 10 right now would be like Noster 11 and Dishsov and Setsuko. Like that would be the order of your list right now, according to what you just said. I'm just pointing.
And where is Aesah on this list, by the way?
Aesah is with the rest of us at 400 LP.
Okay.
I'm one game away from demoting to GM. I'm pretty sure.
Sorry, it's a new patch.
But again, like Frodan, when you're saying like right now, it's just 1 week. To me, I'm thinking of like who has. I guess I'm thinking set 6, like who has consistently over the course of like several months been in like the top 10. And I think like these are the players that have like pretty much always been up there. I know like I think it took a while for Milk to get there, but like once I just think like and again like even going before then, like when he really made an effort, he got there pretty quickly. Yeah, so let's see, like Robin Stallings and Solus, I think are like always consistently very high rank.
So we need 2 more.
GV8 and Kuramex maybe.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like there's I'm definitely forgetting some people. I'm sure if I had like more time to think about this, I would change it up. But I think I mean, like for me making a tier list, I just respect ladder LP. It's just like if you have like if you have like 500 games played, and you've like never been above 1400 LP, I don't I don't see how you can all of a sudden like be a favorite over me, for example, in a tournament. It doesn't make sense to me. I understand like the playstyle is a little different, but they're not that different. Especially because a lot of the latter games, especially at the start of the set, they're very competitive. Like almost all the top players are playing. So
Yeah.
like sometimes you can get in a ladder game that's like could be a tougher lobby than like your day 2 lobby.
Interesting.
I mean,
so then you're
that's the
you're
thing.
saying it's only 1 week of gameplay, and yet you're also saying the beginning of the set's very competitive. So I'm the only reason why is just because I want to get some clarity on how you're rationalizing a lot of this. Does the first week matter or not in your mind? And if so, then why is it not reflected in your tier list?
Oh, I think the first week does matter, but it's too low of a sample size. Because
200 games, like 150 games, is too low of a sample size.
Compared to if we look at set 6, where it's like a lot of the top players had like 700, 800, or I think Setsuko is like over 1,000. I think that's gonna be. I do think 100 games is actually kind of low.
Okay, I just wanted clarity on that.
Sure.
You're
Hey,
totally
it's your
entitled
tier
to
list.
that.
Yeah, it's your tier list. You can do with it as you please. Who are the two at the bottom though? 9 and 10.
He said Kurum and
Kurum and
Goose.
GBA, right?
Liquid
Yeah.
Goose.
All right.
He didn't put
Goose. Yeah, I
himself
gotta get
on
used
the
to calling him
list.
Goose.
Just want to point it out.
I mean, there's like now
Yeah,
I'm looking at the
appreciate
ladder,
that.
and there's definitely people that I might put on the list, like Spencer or
Really?
Spicy Appies. But it's I mean, honestly, like it's hard to just pick 10, you know. Like
That's
Spencer.
what makes it
and-
interesting. That's the
Yeah.
whole point
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
segment. That's
Okay,
the whole
okay.
point of
Exactly.
the segment.
If it
Yeah.
were easy, then we would just do it.
All right.
I guess Frodan does do it, but if it
Let
were
me-
really easy, then I would just do it.
I don't know. I don't even do it. I go 15 deep, and I have
Oh.
trouble at 15 deep. There's people.
That's
I feel like
fair.
I
That's
leave
fair.
off.
It is hard. So there's no changes you would make right now. This is your
Dog is
list.
sad you didn't include him after
War
his
Dog?
giant push to challenger.
Did
All
he
that
say
work
that?
for nothing.
No. Well, he's just gonna have to work harder, and I mean, he's a game dev, so it should be
Yeah,
easy
just
for
work
him.
harder.
Right?
You don't
Like,
work hard enough.
He has all
You don't work hard
all the data, so shouldn't he have an advantage over us? Like, it should be easy
Oh
for him
man,
to get
Oh,
right.
that's
the
another
advantage.
discussion
Oh,
for a
okay.
different time. There's another discussion. The riot
Yeah.
advantage of knowing the data. And being able to climb with
Okay, I honestly think tactics.tools is good enough. Like, I mean, back when I worked at Riot, we had our own internal data, which is better. But I think like tactics.tools is like, it's plenty good enough. Like they analyze in set 6, it was like 3 million games or something. Or not
of
set
games.
6. In set 6.5, before the B patch, it was like 3 million games in Diamond Plus, which again, Diamond Plus is really like Masters Plus because of the soft reset.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think there's plenty of data to work with, and I think it's really useful. I like to use it a lot.
Agreed. Yeah. Agree. Well, okay, so you're locking this list in? Is that it? Is this
I think I'd
final list?
probably fit Appies and Spencer TFT on there somewhere. I think
Alright.
probably instead of Kurum X, he's always up there, but I feel like he's never at the. Actually, he was really high up at the end. I don't know. It's hard to say. Let's see. I do
He
think
gets bumped off.
Spencer and Appies for sure have been like top 10 for like most of the set.
All right.
All right, so
So
Kurum-
who will
So
you
I'll
Kurum-
say
Kurum will
instead
be
of
Kurum
Kurum, I'll say
and-
instead of Kurum and Goose.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean Goose is like, I'm looking at this. He's ranked
Okay.
3 right now. But yeah, I guess it also depends what you mean by the tier list. To me, I think of it as like who has been the most consistent in set 6. But if you're talking about like right now, then yeah, maybe some of those people in 6.5. But in my mind, I think of it as like set 6 overall. Yeah.
All right.
It's whatever
cool.
you want it to be. quite
It's your
frankly.
list. Yeah. That's legit. All right, so there you go. Locked in the player tier list from Aesah. I think it's good. I think it's important that we have a lot of different perspectives on how to approach a tier list too, because it is always going to be a little bit subjective. It is always going to be a little bit from what the personal observations of the player is, and that's why it's fun. That's why we enjoy it. So thanks for playing along, Aesah.
Yeah,
Let's
but
move
generally,
on.
I just think
Oh, go
go
ahead.
look at the leaderboard. Whoever has the most LP, that's the tier list.
Okay. Well, so next time you're on, we'll just like have that prepared in advance. Then we'll keep that in mind.
Yeah,
All right. Well, let's take a look at our question from our viewer, from J Lau. They ask, how transferable / how much do you leverage your professional poker experience when playing TFT? It's an interesting one.
I mean, I think you guys asked me something similar at the very start or at the podcast, and it's just like, yeah, it's just it's not just poker or TFT. It's really any game or yeah, it's just really any game. It's just like you just try to get better at it. It's just that kind of mentality where it's like a lot of people have played, you know, like 1,000 games of TFT since that one, and maybe they've never been above like gold, for example. Uh, and of course, there's nothing wrong with that because it's a game. Like you play for recreation. But
Mm.
for me, you know, like I want to play competitively, so after every game, it's just you try to get a little bit better. And it's the same in poker and TFT, I guess. So I would say it's not really transferable. It's the same skill set that applies to both. So
Okay.
I don't know if that means that it's transferable, I guess.
Sounds like it does.
Okay, okay.
Just a little bit, but yeah. Well, it's interesting because you mentioned playing, being highly ranked in other games like StarCraft and things like that, and I know a lot. I'm sure Dan does too. A lot of former StarCraft players that went on to become professional poker players after that, because a lot of those skills do seem to kind of transfer. So you've kind of done it in reverse order, where you've come from poker to a strategic game, but I've seen it work the opposite way in a lot of cases. Like a lot of the former Brood War players in Korea became poker players after they were done, including the famous Slayer's boxer was a poker player for a while after that. So
Oh, I
yeah,
didn't know that.
yep.
I will have to say one thing that maybe I misinterpreted the question but when I think of like when I reading this question, I'm thinking of like the skills to like be good at like playing poker. Like you sit down at a table, how good are you at the game?
Mhm.
But like playing poker professionally is just like completely different, right? Because playing TFT professionally in its current state is mostly about streaming, which I just started doing. But playing professional poker is mostly about. I mean, you're your own boss. You have to manage your money. If you win like $3,000 in a day, you can't just go out and buy like a new I don't know, a new computer because you're not going to make $3,000 every day. You have an expected hourly that's, you know,
Mhm.
like probably like a reasonable amount that you might make at a normal job. Um, and you have to motivate yourself because like there's a lot of days when, I mean, honestly, like the reason I got so much into TFT is because like technically I still was playing poker professionally, but I would just wake up and be like, man, I don't feel like playing poker. I'm gonna play some TFT, right? So it's like, so I'm saying like the skills to being a poker professional is mostly not about playing good poker. Like if you're good at PFT, you can definitely be good at the playing part of poker, like no doubt.
Because it's part of it is just that grind, right? Is being able to play all those games, understand the EV like you're saying, and then like be able to take the losses too. We talked about that a little bit earlier as well.
Yeah, the mentality. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, like the number one thing that ends most professional poker players' careers is not being able to take losses. It's very common where like someone loses like $3,000 in a hand, and then they're like, "I'm gonna go play blackjack," and it's like obviously, well, or like let's say roulette, because okay, so like for those of you guys who don't know, you cannot win in roulette. It's literally impossible. Sure, you can win in a day, you can win in a month, but like there's no way to
It's
get
a
an edge
losing
over the
game.
casino. So it's like anytime you play, you're always losing in the long run.
Mm.
But like a lot of poker players, they just don't have that self control, and then yeah, that's like the number one ender of careers for professional poker players.
I want to go off of this a little bit more because I forgot to say, as I seem to do a lot lately, that in chat ask questions to Aessah, and he'll be picking one to answer as well, and whoever he picks gets a gift card as well. So I'll get better at remembering that in the future. But for now, let's keep the conversation going a little bit. Like when I lived in Korea way back in 2011, I lived in a house with a bunch of StarCraft players, and one of them would also, between like ladder sessions, would also just like play poker, and he would just have like 6 tables open at once, and he would just be playing
Yeah.
all of them, and he would just be like sitting there like grinding poker, and like that was how he would make a lot of his money, you know. And like, so I talked to him about it, and he'd say a lot of the same things, where it's just like, yeah, you know, the wins and losses on an individual level aren't as important. It's more just like having the average be in favor of you financially over the course of the day. And it's like that in TFT, you know, on the ladder, a lot of esports as well, is that like, yeah, you're going to take those 8s, but as long as you're overall getting the top 4s, you know, getting off tours, you're going to continue to move up, you know. Gotta take the losses and learn from it. Yeah.
Yeah, or make a twit longer, one or the other.
Or make a twit longer. That's true too.
Yeah. And that actually kind of ties into the tier list thing about like how Frodan was saying like Noster's at the top right now. Like everyone's LP fluctuates up and down, so it's like
yes.
We'll
no
see
shade to
if...
Noster. He
yeah.
Was
I rated him right before this.
But the dude couldn't even really consistently hit Challenger in set 6. So whether it's by choice, by design, like if he's just memeing, or that's actually his ceiling, we'll see, right? Like, can he maintain number 1 by the end of the set? My money's on no, but I'm happy to be proven wrong.
Yeah, like there's the snapshots. Like if Noster qualifies to regionals through snapshots, then definitely he will be at the top of my tier list for regionals. If he qualifies through snapshots, because to me that's the hardest way to qualify.
All right, so we've got some questions in our Discord channel that you can check out, and pick one of those real quick, and then yeah, we'll have you reveal who the winner is. Have you ever dabbled in poker, Frodan? I played it a little bit way back in college, but I never got into it. I don't know, it just didn't interest me the way that
casually
did.
Yeah. Just for fun, like I never really studied in terms of like understanding proper like like betting sizes and like how to play my position. Like I'm familiar that's how you're supposed to do things. No different than in TFT. I'm sure people's like, yeah, I know you're supposed to like save up your gold and eventually roll it and build items. But I think that's pretty much where my understanding goes. The most poker experience I've ever gotten was like when I was like in college or high school. I forgot, there was like this mobile game called Governor of Poker, which was just like an RPG poker game, and it was like a saloon style. It was pretty fun to play that, and that was the most interested I've ever been in.
Oh, right. I can't type in the thing, but I guess I'll answer this question from Connor's Me. What are the biggest mistakes you see people make playing innovators?
I'm glad you picked this one.
Oh yeah. I think. Okay, you know what? I only know about Sex 6, so maybe I should pick a different one, because I don't know about 6.5. Because it's not going to be relevant.
I can tell you
it's not going to be relevant.
People make playing innovators is playing innovators with all 1-star board.
Yeah, it's not going to be relevant to 6.5. So sorry. I'm actually going to pick the next one. I'm going to pick the next one. How do you do it? I'm sorry.
I can say one thing. About this. People are playing too many 1-star innovator boards. And just because you see it's good in data, you're like, oh, surely it'll be good. When I eventually hit these 2-stars, it's going to be great. But by the time you roll down, other people are rolling down and they have a stronger version of the board. It's a very big mistake, maybe.
Yeah.
Gotta adapt. Gotta pivot. Chat winner? Question mark?
The problem is I only know for set 6. I haven't played enough set 6.5 to know. Because like,
do we have any questions that apply then? Let's see. What's your other choice here?
I'll do the how do you deal with tilting by Iliopolis.
All right.
I think this is a really, really good I think it's a good question, because it's like I mentioned, is like the number 1 killer of like career killer for poker players is like it's tilt, basically. Like that's what it is. Tilt. The word tilt comes from poker, I believe. I'm not entirely sure that's true.
That was
but
pinball.
I guess like maybe, but I'm thinking like gamers only started using it in my mind like recently, but like a decade ago. But poker players have been using it forever.
Oh, all right.
So that's where I kind of think about that. But I kind of mentioned it's like, oh, it's the number 1 career killer, but I didn't talk about like, oh, like how do you deal with that? I think like one of the most obvious ways and one of the best ways is just to take a break. Like nowadays I'm streaming all my games, but like back in set 6 when I was playing, if I lost a game, even if I did not feel tilted, like in my mind, like I could be sitting here telling myself, it's cool, I'm completely fine, I don't feel anything. When I play that next game, like my win rate is going to be a lot less than average. It just is. Like I think like so I think like taking a break is definitely you could it doesn't have to be a long break. Everyone's gonna have to find out for yourself. You could just take a break for 30 minutes. I would say this is a lot easier said than done because like when you do get that eighth, it's like a like you just really want to queue up again and like get a win because it feels bad to be like you're like no, I don't want to go to sleep on this or whatever, like you know, right? Like you really want to go and be like I want to like I want to get that first or top 4 or whatever, and then I'll be done and then I'll feel good. So it's like it's really hard to do, and I think a lot of people will underestimate that because like it's much easier said than done.
Yeah, fair enough. And the thing is too is like tilt can come in different forms too. Like I know for me, even if I'm playing fairly well, if I go more than like 3 or 4 games in a row, I just start to get distracted. And it's not quite the same as tilt, but I know now that I should probably just take a break for an hour or two after playing that many games because my quality of play just goes down no matter what state of mind I happen to be in. So I think it's as much responding to negative feelings about the game as it is to responding like what is going to be productive playing time if you want to move up the ladder.
There's
But
definitely like winners tilt too, yeah, where it's like you
yeah,
won so many games that like you're not playing that well because you just feel invincible.
right.
That could definitely happen where it's like you just feel like you're gonna hit your units and it's like obviously like you're not guaranteed to hit your units, so
Then you don't, it's even more frustrating. Then you mega tilt, you know? But we should probably end it there. Congrats to our chat winner. I threw a gifted sub over at Connor's me over there to for his troubles. That was a good question.
Yeah.
That's very nice of you.
But
Very nice of you.
it's time to end the show. It's been another long one. Thanks for joining us, Aesah, on this one. And before we close it out, we have to get some final thoughts. So final thoughts from you, Aesah, on the show, on life, on whatever shout outs you want to make. The floor is yours.
yeah, I'm glad to chat with you guys. It was a lot of fun. I've watched like a lot of episodes of the show in the past, and it's always a good time. Shout outs I guess would just be like TFT community, the dev team, like I don't think anyone really thinks the dev team is lazy. I mean, people can say
Shouldn't.
things when they're emotional obviously, but like I don't think anyone really believes that. So I mean like Giant Slayer hosting the tournaments and everything. Just like streaming community. Not just streaming community, just like TFT community overall. I think like there's so much of it in that's like intertwined. But yeah, just the TFT community is like everyone's really positive. I don't, from what I have seen, like not like a single person has like been mean to me. Everyone's been like really supportive, and it's like everyone's always been like down to help out if I like need help. So yeah, I would say. Let me think if there's anything else. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many people, so I'll leave it at that, I think.
All right. Cool. Frodan, final thoughts.
Yep. Tune into the Hextech Havoc double up tournament this weekend. I'll be casting with Admirable and Keen. And it'll be very early in the morning, so I better start adjusting my sleep schedule tonight.
Yes, and please
That's
let
select.
us qualify for the next double up tournament through
Ooh.
your regular LP.
I'm sure. I think like set 7. I mean, they said that they're going to lean more to double up, so maybe by set 7 they'll have some kind of official ranking. We'll see.
That'd be cool. I want to play more of that at some
Yeah,
point.
because I would love to play in a double up tournament, but
I need to get a partner. Anyway, that's a whole different thing. Thanks for watching, everybody. It's been another great show. You know, the thing, one cycle I've noticed as esports kind of progress over the years is that, especially on social media platforms, whether it's Reddit or Twitter and all that, is that there's the initial discovery phase of an esport where everybody's thrilled with it, everybody's talking about different strategies and just really loving the game. And then you cross into a part where people start to recognize the things they don't like about the game. The honeymoon period is over, as they say, and then you start to see a lot of negativity and toxicity injected into the community. And so I feel like TFT is into that stage in its life as an esport now. So I will throw one final warning out there to everyone that don't be part of that problem. You know, let's keep the discussion to the strategy, to things you like about the game, to finding ways to get better, you know, to having fun with it, sharing funny clips, all that kind of stuff. Criticisms are totally fine, but whenever you deliver them, make sure you're delivering them in an effective, positive way, and the community will be better for it. So I'll throw that one out there really quick at the end. But back to the final thoughts real quick. Thanks again to Giant Slayer for throwing everything together with this. They do a great job with the show. Thanks everybody out there for watching. Thanks to the devs for making the game. We know you're not lazy. We know you're working hard. We appreciate it. So until next time, stay safe, be excellent to each other, play a lot of TFT, have a great time, and we will see you in a couple weeks.